Hello, Oscar. Grandpa here. And Moosey, how are you, Moosey? Oh, yeah, Moosey's well, and looking forward to seeing you soon. It's not long, is it, before you make that big journey to come and see us both. And, of course, Granny Lindsay, very special. She's looking forward to seeing you too. And Auntie Anna. So everybody's waving to you, and we can't wait for you to get here. And I hope Mummy and Daddy are well too. Anyway, so we better read a little bit more about How to Train Your Dragon, and that's the series title, and the particular book we're reading is How to Be a Pirate. And if you remember, Hiccup was having a lot of problem with his sword fighting, but then a great big box came along and held the ship, and that meant that he was saved from, well, probably certain problems, I think. Anyway, the boat sank, and they held on to the box, this big box, 6 foot by 3 foot, that had hold the ship. So they held on to it, and they got back to Long Beach holding on to it. And we read this little bit. As soon as Fishlegs had dragged himself off the box and collapsed panting onto the beach, Gobber stopped being irritated, because the box wasn't a box at all. It was a coffin. Oh no. A huge 6.5 foot floating coffin with the following words carved into the lid. Beware, do not open this coffin. What's going to happen, do you think, Oscar? Anyway, chapter 4, whose coffin is this anyway? The boys all crowded around the box, forgetting in their curiosity about their narrow escape from drowning. It's a coffin, sir. Yes, I can see that, thank you, Warty Hog, snapped Gobber the Belch. The question is, whose? The answer was written right underneath the words, do not open this coffin, in letters scratched out with some kind of dagger, and stained with something that might once have been blood. Cursed be he who disturbs the remains of Grimbeard the Ghastly, the greatest pirate who ever struck terror into the Inner Isles. Oh my goodness me, Grimbeard the Ghastly, what a name, Oscar. Hiccup felt a cold, clammy shiver run down his back, and he suddenly knew that something really bad was going to happen. Grimbeard the Ghastly had been Hiccup's own great-great-grandfather. Wow. The lost treasure of Grimbeard the Ghastly was a popular hooligan saga. It told of how Grimbeard had won a glorious treasure through his brilliance at piracy and sword fighting, a treasure that included his famous sword, the Storm Blade. Look, there is the Storm Blade, Oscar. Wow, a magnificent looking sword it is too. And it's got written there, owned by Grimbeard the Ghastly, the greatest Viking sword ever. But after 20 years of glorious rule, Grimbeard had disappeared on a mysterious quest, and neither he nor the treasure were ever seen again. And now here, out of the blue, 100 years later, his coffin had appeared back on the shores of Berk. It was spooky. Ooh, what do you think? What do you think? You see? No, a bit spooky. Ooh, chattered Warty Hog in excitement. Do you think there might be treasure in there, sir? Can we open it, sir? Please, sir, can we open it? All the other boys joined in the clamour, except for Hiccup. Hiccup knew that Grimbeard had been the ultimate in pirateness, the greediest, grisliest, goriest Viking who had ever sailed and slew and farted his way across the northern seas. Treasure or no treasure, if a man like Grimbeard the Ghastly was telling you not to mess with his coffin, it was Hiccup's personal opinion that you ought to listen, even if he had been dead for 100 years, particularly if he'd been dead for 100 years. Right, said Gobber, just as excited as everybody else. We're going to have to forget about the advanced rudery lesson. This is an important discovery, and I think we should take it straight to Stoik the Vast and the Council of Elders. Bear Hug, Sharp Knife, Warty Hug, Clueless, pick it up and carry it back to the hooligan village. The boys hauled the coffin onto their shoulders. Don't just hang about shivering, you lazy lugfish, Gobber bellowed crazily. This is pirate training, not a holiday with your mother on the mainland. Quick march, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. He set off at a brisk trot towards the hooligan village. The boys sighed and began to stumble after him. Snotlight and Dog's Breath the Durbrain sauntered over to Hiccup, who was sitting trying to catch his breath on a large rock, shivering violently, because he'd been nearly drowned, didn't he, Oscar? Shame that Dog's Breath was interrupted, sneered Snotlight. Just when things were getting interesting, don't you think, Dog's Breath? Yeah, grinned Dog's Breath the Durbrain. I reckon, said Snotlight thoughtfully to the remaining boys, that Hiccup must be the most pathetic sword fighter I have ever seen. Don't you think, guys? I mean, face it, Hiccup, somebody who fights like a granny with a back problem is never going to be chief of his tribe. Don't know about that, do you, Oscar? Oh, and so who is going to be chief of the tribe if Hiccup isn't? Asked Fishlegs, still lying spread-eagled on the sand in the exact position where he had fallen off the coffin. Let me guess. You, I suppose. Snotlight flexed his muscles, making the skeleton tattooed on his right bicep grin smugly. I am the obvious choice, he said. I've got noble blood. Snotlight was Hiccup's cousin, the son of Baggy Bum the Beerbelly, and the chief's younger brother. Charisma, good looks. Snotlight stroked the rather unpleasant little straggly hairs on his upper lip that he was trying to grow into a moustache. And I'm brilliant at absolutely everything. Unfortunately, this was true. Snotlight was a natural at mindless violence, superb at advanced rudery and practically everything else. Particularly sword fighting, says Snotlight, drawing his sword from its scabbard. The other boys gasped. Wow, breathed Speedy Fist. The latest double-sided extra-biting super sword. Curving inner edges, silver point finish. Where did you get that from, Snotlight? Look, there's the picture of it, Oscar. Whoa. The latest double-sided extra-biting super sword, like Snotlight's flash cut. This is the flash cut, boasted Snotlight, swishing the beautiful sword around so that everybody could get a good look. Makes that silly swift point scaremaker that Dog's Breath lost for you look pretty weak, doesn't it, Hiccup? Let me show you how sword fighting should be done. This, sneered Snotlight, lunging athletically, is a perfect pointer. Hiccup dodged. And this is the destroyer's defence. Snotlight gave an animal howl and brought the sword down over his head, stopping just before he cut Hiccup in half. And that, jeered Snotlight, slashing the flash cut expertly from side to side and then leaping forward suddenly, the sword ending up just inches away from Hiccup's heart. That is a Grimbeard's grapple. But I expect a loser like you, Hiccup, who couldn't even beat a 3-year-old in nappies, hasn't even heard of moves like that. Hiccup said nothing. That, dear cousin, sneered Snotlight, is how to sword fight. He put his sword back in its scabbard. Yep, he said, very pleased with himself. I am a genius. I am going to make the best chief this tribe has ever had. Oh dear. It's just a shame, said Fishlegs, that your brain isn't as big as one of your nostrils. Snotlight looked irritated for a second as all the other boys laughed. He grabbed Hiccup by the scruff of the neck and lifted him clear off the ground. Amazing how the wooden case to that sword fell off, wasn't it? He spat right into Hiccup's face. You were lucky this time. But the question is, can you be lucky all the time? Think about it, loser. Come on, Dog's Breath, let's leave the girlies to get their beauty sleep. He dropped Hiccup, and as he went, he trod heavily and deliberately on one of Fishleg's hands. Whoops, laughed Snotlight. Ha, 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 snorted Dog's Breath the Durbrain, and they jogged off. If Snotlight is ever chief of this tribe, I'm emigrating, said Fishleg, shaking his head. Are you all right, Fishlegs? Asked Hiccup with concern as he gazed down on Fishlegs, still lying flat on his back. Perfect, croaked Fishlegs, coughing up a bit more seawater. I do love an early morning swim. How about you? Oh, couldn't be better really, said Hiccup bleakly, taking off one of his boots and pouring out a flood of seawater and a couple of small fish. There he is. There's Hiccup emptying his boots and a couple of small fish coming out of the water. My first day at pirate training, and I've already been humiliated by my pathetic sword fighting. Beaten to a pulp, shipwrecked, and narrowly escaped death by drowning. It's not even 10 o'clock yet. Maybe it was the sword that was the problem, suggested Fishlegs kindly, but untruthfully. Hiccup brightened up. You could be right, he said eagerly. It felt a bit light in my hands. Perhaps I need something a bit chunkier, to get some weight behind my swing. He did a few imaginary lunges in the air. That must be it, because I still have this feeling that sword fighting is going to be my thing, Yes, said Fishlegs, not wanting to hurt Hiccup's feelings by mentioning that it had been the worst display of sword fighting he had seen, ever. And you need a lot more practice, don't you think? Hiccup nodded enthusiastically. Anyway, he said, we need to get after the others. I'm freezing and I have a horrible feeling that some idiot is going to suggest opening the coffin, which says quite clearly, do not open. It would be just the sort of mindlessly stupid thing they would do. What do you think could be in it? Asked Fishlegs. I don't know, said Hiccup, but a pirate like Grimbeard the Ghastly won't have hidden the treasure in it without booby-trapping it in some way. You read what it said on the top. A man like him could have thought of all sorts of unpleasant surprises. Fishlegs sighed and struggled to his feet. They settled slowly towards the hooligan village, Toothless hitching a ride on Hiccup's helmet. They wouldn't open it, would they? Worried Fishlegs. Surely they couldn't be that stupid. And there's a picture of Grimbeard the Ghastly. He does look pretty horrible, doesn't he? Chapter 5. Do not open a coffin that says, do not open on the front. As soon as they got to the hooligan village, Hiccup and Fishlegs changed into dryish clothes. Burke was one of those damp places where clothes never really dried. They were just warm and wet rather than cold and wet. They hurried as quickly as they could towards the Great Hall. By the time they got there, Stoic had called a big meeting of everybody, and the Great Hall was already packed to bursting with great hairy hooligans jostling each other for a good view of the coffin, which had been placed on a table in front of the fire. Bit by bit, Hiccup and Fishlegs managed to wriggle their way through the crowd to the front. Whoa. Ah, Hiccup, there you are, said Hiccup's father, Stoic the Vast, absent-mindedly, as he consulted with the other elders in front of the coffin. Stoic was a terrifying, red-headed bull of a man whose belly turned a corner of a good 2 foot or two before the rest of him. Interesting find you've made here, my boy, said Stoic, ruffling his son's hair proudly. The lost treasure of Grimbeard the Ghastly, eh? Yes, father, but, said Hiccup. We're just about to open it, said Stoic. But what I'm trying to say is, interrupted old Brinkley, the cleverest and most ancient elder of the hooligan tribe. It is written quite clearly on the top, do not open this coffin. Cursed be he who disturbs the remains of Grimbeard the Ghastly, the greatest pirate who ever struck terror into the Inner Isles. In my considerable opinion, said old Brinkley, it is always a good idea not to open a coffin that says, do not open on the front. So what do you think is going to happen next time, Oscar? I'm sure there's going to be some exciting happenings. Anyway, I think we'll stop there for the moment. And it's lots of love from me and from Moosey and turn around Moosey, and from Granny and Auntie Anna and everybody here. Lots of love to you all, your little sister and Mummy and Daddy. And we'll be, hopefully, I'll read you next week, all being well, and hopefully we'll be seeing you soon. Have a great time. Lots of love. Bye.